Star Trek Section 31. Finally! It's dark, it's slick, and so many tunnels. Hey, it is Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland, letting the dust settle just a bit on all the recent Trek headlines and news, and, well, instead of getting another hot take or a quick take, you get a second opinion from Dr. Trek. Hey, look, I have been authoring, writing, interviewing, editing, witnessing, archiving, hosting, dot connecting, commentating, and yeah, fanning Star Trek for a while now. So I just want to say, here we are, finally, Section 31. Boy, what a long storied road this one has had, right? Since it was going to be a series with Giorgio, right? The first spin-off of Discovery, and we know what happened. Somewhere between a pandemic and an exploding movie career, that did not happen. Now look, I'm going to enter into this trepidatiously. This is not an episode of a series. This is a standalone movie. And I did not know what I thought about this. So I'm determined to demand to like it or try, okay? Now, look, I was not on edge because of the whole Section 31 thing, right? No, to me, it was just all about the tone and the mood and what it could be and not be. Because right off the bat, let me just say this. I, too, share the whole Section 31 is against all the ideals of Gene Roddenberry. I mean, it's what most fans say. They want original series, Next Generation, DS9 Voyager, right? But, you know, at the same time, I know that Section 31, it's not a cookie-cutter concept. It's not all one size fits all. It feels that way because we were so smacked with first impression when it popped up at us at DS9, right? And Sloan, the Section 1, the whole murkiness, the whole weirdness of it all, we get it late in DS9. That left the taste in our mouth. And then the next time it pops up was Enterprise. Yes, Enterprise. And then years and years and years later, well, it's in a Kelvin movie, but that's a Kelvin movie. You don't have to worry about it. But then here it is, wham, right off the bat in Discovery, and even season 3 Picard. So it's a thing that people still debate. But what's confusing is, look at the timeline. Thank you, Enterprise. It's from Section 31 of the Charter about security. But that's pre-Federation. The Enterprise was Earth Starfleet. So somehow this cancer within the bureaucracy has been around since Earth. Thank you. Infected the rest of the Federation at the time. So what fits, though, because people say, well, Kirk never talked about it. Picard never talked about it. Well, no, we have it from Enterprise days. So in timeline canon, you got Enterprise, then no, it didn't just pop up at DS9. It had to have been there all that time. It was so low-key in those days. Now, look, you've got Discovery 10 years before Kirk and Spock now, and that's when Section 31 blows open for us. Look how obvious they are. They wind up almost causing the end of Western Alpha Quadrant civilization as we know it, right? That's what forced Discovery into the 32nd century. Then no, we never heard about it from Kirk and Spock, and even a century later from Picard. What happened? Well, I'm going to retcon and say that explosion, the control, the sphere, all of that made the brass, basically Section 31 had to go underground. And that's why Kirk never mentioned it. Although, you know, that whole steal the Romulan cloaking device covertly and break the neutral zone treaty laws while you're doing it, that sure always smacked of latter-day Section 31 tone to me. Just saying. Just saying. And now I hear that Section 31 is set, or originally was set, about 2333. Which, if that's true or not, we do know that we are, I don't know, about 2 Rachel Garrett ranks away from 2344, which is when her Enterprise C disappeared. Yeah, yesterday's Enterprise. So we're in that ballpark era, that late Kirk midway point to Picard. Section 31, not mentioned in Next Gen. But I always thought, Pressman and the Pegasus phasing project that was breaking even more Romulan treaties, always smacked later day. The perspective that we got later on always felt very Section 31 to me. And there's probably a couple more things you could chalk up to 31 in Picard's time. But okay, fine. But Sloane kind of oozes out of the woodwork here like a termite. So definitely Section 31 is on the outs, and then the plot with the Romulan senator later on during the Dominion War, and then the whole Dominion War plot, right, to kill off the founders overtly, which we got not only from DS9 but gets revisited in flashback for poor Vadic in Picard season 3. So Section 31 is very much woven into the fabric of Trek. It's not just as the shows rolled off the production assembly line, but it's in the timeline too. But you can account for, do we wear our black badges in public? Yes. Overreach. With a little AI gone mad help too. You can see the pendulum swinging on Section 31. I'm just going to say. So no, I will put up with it being a factor that comes and goes in Federation and Starfleet life. To me, it was all about the delivery of a story and the characters, and even more importantly, a tone. Would this indeed be Guardians of the Galaxy meets Mission Impossible? And which Mission Impossible? I was rooting for Desilu 60's Mission Impossible. I even felt like I got a couple of that too. Put a pin in that. But hey, you sit down to watch this Star Trek and modern Star Trek, and right off the bat, boom, there's no starship bumper. There's no little intro. But what comes up first? The Paramount Pictures logo. My God, this really is a movie. But then, no. You get Star Trek backwards. It's a hint of the mirror universe. And then, yeah, you do get the hero starship flying bumper. But what the heck is that thing? Well, keep on guessing, because no one ever tells you in this movie. But there you go. Oh, full disclosure, one more thing. I can name drop Guardians of the Galaxy, but I'm not a huge fan. I have enough to say grace over here. However, I am a big Firefly fan. So I am no stranger to gallant rogues taking on the headwinds. Just not the recent hot ones. Point being, I am not going to be all about trying to draw connections between every other situation of Black Ops teams against the odds out there, okay? Rogue or otherwise. Unless it's Ocean's 11. Or maybe Leverage. Yeah. Well, kudos for this movie. Yeah. Writer Craig Sweeney, if you were watching Discovery from the beginning, you know that he was in those season 1 credits. Now, he had been a consulting and then an executive producer on Elementary for all but season 4 of its 5 seasons in the interim. And he was an early writer on Disco. He was there with Brian Fullers. He stayed as consulting producer through season 1. He had one title, Context is for Kings, big Lorca show. And he had been involved here along with the original, when it was going to be a series, showrunners, Bowie Kim and Erica Lippold. Obviously, the series didn't pan out. They moved on. He stayed on as the writer. Meanwhile, on the director's side, yeah, a real familiar name. It's Tunde Olatunde Osunsanmi. He had been co-exec or executive producer on all 65 episodes of Discovery and 4 of Short Treks. And he had 14 discos and 2 short treks as a director. He moved right into this project when the Discovery shooting went down. Okay, big things, little things. And if we stay with our format and we stay with that idea that this is 2333-ish, okay, it's cool. We get the Terran Empire logo in that flashback of 2333. That would be midway between our visits to Georgiou during the Disco time, right? The original timeline, 10 years before Kirk and Spock, and Sisko's visits a century later. But what's interesting here, if Data Nu is telling the truth and the Empire is facing collapse and teetering on the edge of running through its resources. That would be 2333. It seems like that could be getting close to being conquered by the Klingon Cardassian alliance, right? And then they'd be about 40 years from falling in turn to the Terran rebellion in Cisco Kira's time, just to say. Oh, little thing. There's mention here of a memory wipe, which is interesting. We are 30 years away from Dr. Pulaski's little, I don't know, custom homebrew recipe that we hear about in season 2 of Next Generation. Does that mean that maybe it's known to Section 31 at this time, but not shared widely with the rest of Starfleet and the civilian world? Because you know what? It's very cool. We have a whole scene here with a phase pod, which is nice. So it's known to Section 31 at this time, but not to mainstream Starfleet either, apparently. I mean, years later, when Picard and their crew are trying to phase match the Davidians in Time Zero, what is going on here? Oh, and phaser bursts. Boo. But then again, the same weapon is giving us a straight beam, yay, for disintegration, and our poor Deltan agent, Mel. But it has to be a continuous beam. I don't know. Is that a Starfleet phaser? Is that a private? Is that a Section 31 gun? By the way, that disintegration, it leaves ashes that blow in the wind. That was interesting. So yes, is Section 31 hoarding technology ahead of even its Starfleet brethren for decades? Put a pin in that. Oh, big thing, which actually piles on with that. Quasi says that 31 made first contact with Nanakins. 31 only? Not the Federation or Starfleet in general? Does that explain the mystery and surprise of elves and pixies? And space leprechauns? But seriously, these are all piling up to show exactly how rogue Section 31 was operating. Oh, little thing. So Quasi, the chameleoid, like Iman's character in Star Trek 6, has green blood. Or is that just part of the disguise? Either way, I love the fact that maybe the chameleoid's true form is that spiny, short, tentacled look. That was cool. Oh, big thing. The quantum universe passageway, right? Thanks to good old ion storms. Go all the way back to Mirror Mirror, the original and the original series. Sure thing. But this is a convergence of the two that's systematic and planned. It's not an anomaly. It's a passageway. They're timing it on their chronometers. Like it's an interdimensional doorway that's a secret. Only a few know about it so far. That's going to be the Terran invasion plan. What's cool is that it's over by the Crescent Nebula, which is newly added to the star charts at the beginning are really cool. Interesting, raising questions. But the Crescent Nebula here, this doorway, is a little below Cardassia, a little below the Cardassian Union at the time. Again, midway between Kirk and Picard. Hold that thought. Oh, and a little thing, if you notice, it's easy to read if you freeze frame. The Dada no bio screen, he's from the Watt colonies, which is interesting, which is several planets. The capital planet is Tajay, and he's also involved with the star system, the Beus star system. And then there's something called the Enki Star Belt, whatever that is. Is it a stellar nursery nebula? I don't know. I know. But the wackiest thing is he was born on Delta. He's Deltan. The even wackier thing, the fine print says that he's wanted for germ attacks on judges on Kronos. And if connected to it, faces murder charges from Klingon high courts. Oh, little thing. Tunde. You had to get that camera spin in there, huh? Oh, big thing. What is this Treaty of Catan? Now, there was a Treaty of Catan on Vulcan in Archer and T'Pol's time. that was who knows what that was about, but that was just on Vulcan before there was a Federation, unless Catan, like Kittimer, was the site of, or Babel was the site of future treaties and all this. But this is all about the western side of the Federation space. Yes. Now, there was a hard edge line there, which looked a little wacky. But is this no development past this line, no contact? Is this the canon reason why apparently contact with Cardassians and Bajorans and Ferengi and Talarians and the Breen and the Zenkethi, why it all lagged behind, the old guard adversaries on the other side, the Klingons and Romulans? Okay. But it's kind of imprecise. If you look closely, look at the details, there's some planets that the Feds have clearly been in contact with for ages, like Gideon from Kirk's time. Plus, there's 2 star bases over that line. Unless in 3D talk, the star bases are above and below where the extent of that lateral, you know what I mean. 3D thinking, #texture not trivia. But still, the cool thing about all that star chart material, you're welcome, in the opening is we see the Baram station, the casino, where Joju turns up here at the beginning. In this forbidden area, at this time in the 2330s, it's near, as you can see, Huperia. And Huperia is the home world of My Hardu. Grand Nagus' ex-tall manservant, he is Huperian. By the way, that Baram crowd, tough crowd. There's fights breaking out. There's firefights. There's people up and down your table, rolling across, flailing around. No one moves a muscle. Even when the singer stops singing. One tough crowd. But I do have some questions. There's a star date here. Star date 1292.4? I'm not sure what system that is. Whether this was originally 2333 and it altered in production or what, but that's way too late for Kirk's early star date, 13 something something, back when Where No Man. I mean, and this is 31 years before TNG gave us that the 41,000 star dates are in 2364. I mean, you could subtract 31 and the 5-digit system in play here could still just be the 10,000s. We won't even get into when the systems changed over or what fine. I'm still wondering what stardate 12924 refers to. I guess I'll stay tuned. Another question. Was that Baram corridor an homage to the time tunnel? Okay, real question. How does Georgiou's phaser pod know what frequency the assassin's phase pod is at? Or vice versa? I mean, does it sense? Can you preset them in various degrees? And just what did happen to let her trapped foot rephase when she jumped up suddenly at the end of the set piece? Oh, and speaking of spatial phasing, remember the original reason Georgiou had to leave Discovery was because her molecular structure was breaking down, because she was originally a native of the Mirror Universe, and the fact that she had come into another universe and then in a different time was the reason for her illness, and she had to go back. She had to get away from at least one of them, not in combination. She had to go back to either the Mirror Universe and or her own time. Well, this is clearly Prime, and she's still 70 years ahead of her original time. But so what, is that close enough? Closer than 800 years? Or did Section 31 come up with another treatment here for a strange disease and not share it with anybody else? Am I seeing a pattern here? Okay, favorite lines. Yes, I actually had a couple. One of them was, "Don't get your prime directives in a bunch." I know it was something. I don't know. Another line. Georgiou says, "Let's get messy." And it's a kind of a character moment with Garrett, but also it takes me back to San Diego Comic-Con last summer, 2024. That was the way Alex Kurtzman tried to describe Section 31. He called it the messy Trek. And I guess that's where that comes from. Was this the messy Trek? Maybe on a budget. Oh, another one. Science is just controlled chaos. From Garrett. Okay. Oh. Terran Empire? A lifetime ago. Okay, it was text, not spoken. Well, that works. No Canonista's going to get after you on that one. Cast and characters. Okay, that brings us down to, well, a long list of folks. I'm not going to focus on everybody. So many people are coming and going. But let me just start off with that cameo at the beginning. Kudos on everybody involved for keeping the Jamie Lee Curtis secret a secret. But here's what gets me. It's 70 years, yes, after Discovery's big fight with Control's AI monster taking over Section 31 with its own fleet. 70 years. And Control, that's still Section 31's head code title. Okay. But I gotta say, that opening video that Jamie Lee Curtis as Control recites for the audience, it's a mission briefing. Did that take anybody back to the old original Desilu Mission Impossible? Remember your mission, Jim, should you decide to accept it, on the little cassette tape player. In this case, though, this video did not self-destruct in 10 seconds. By the way, she mentions at the end the next mission is going to be about Turkana 4. We all know what that was. Yep, it's Tasha and Ishara Yar's failed colony. And just if this really is 2333, that is 4 years before Tasha's birth. And her sister was even a little later, a little younger. So maybe they're sensing everything going to hell in a handcart and got to get in there and fix it, and they didn't. Or did they just make it worse? Now, Dada no. Great job, Joe Pingy. That's how we pronounce it. One of the memorable characters of this thing. I'd love to see him again sometime. Now, the whole concept of the Nannikins, I thought it was funny and ingenious. And I don't know, if not, ready for anime. But hey, I can go with it. And the golem bipedal humanoid bodies they utilize. But that was a weird use of extreme and obvious Earth dialects, right? Scottish, Irish, Aussie. Okay. But I do got to say that South African actor Sven Roygrok, I'll give him credit. He was a fearless actor here. He went for it over the cliff. He went from silly to savage. I think he pulled it off. And then we've got Quasi, a survivor. Sam Richardson, Emmy winner from Ted Lasso. And yes, Alok Sahar, Amari Hardwick there. Interesting. This was leaked at some interview at some Comic-Con, but it still didn't sink in. It turns out that he's not just a human, he's an augment. He says they took my planet, but that's Earth, because he's talking about being over 200 years old. He dates back to the original eugenics wars, which is interesting. Well, you know what? Zeph kept calling him captain. Is he really a captain in rank? Do Section 31 agents have Starfleet rank or the equivalent? I don't know. But yes, he's 350 years old. He slept. He was in cold storage. Was he one of the Soong embryos liberated later? I don't know. But then he says, she noticed me. This mysterious Gary of Mar that slaughtered his father made me an augment. What does that do? That means he wasn't selectively bred. He, like Bashir a century later, was genetically resequenced to be a super soldier. Interesting. And it flies right by you. But I got to say, the most important person to me in this entire cast is Rachel Garrett. I'm because at first I thought Lieutenant was a little young to be put in charge of these rogue Section 31 agents, but she holds her own, right? They mostly respect her, and then at the end she makes Lieutenant Commander. So yeah, we got 11 years to go to the Lost in the Enterprise C. You can get up 2 steps in rank easy in 11 years, right? That can work. And I guess we're seeing early on Rachel Garrett just seems to have some kind of a thing for anomalies and vortexes, don't you think? Interdimensional rifts. And then what can I say? Michelle Yeoh was Georgiou. I was never as in love with the Georgiou character as some people were that demanded that this series come out, and now the series has become a movie. And what are we thinking about that? What are we thinking about that? One thing I know, if Michelle Yeoh is involved, there's going to be fight set pieces. These were like what, 5-minute fights at a time? Felt like 50? Okay, this is my personal thought. The only place I can stand the modern, heavily choreographed fight scene, barely in the Jason Bourne movies. And he's supposed to be a genetically modified super soldier too. No, to me, they're just silly in superhero movies. It gets to the fight scene and I go, oh, this is so comic booky. And then I go, oh, yeah, that's because it is. That's my thing. But you know what? That's me. They just go on and on and on and on. And yeah, half the reason I didn't like Stid was because of the unending superhuman fights on the sky sled and yeah, all that. And there was so much 20th century shit talk. Talk shit, tight ass shit, even yikes. Felt very 21st century. Now we had some great visual effects here, especially at the end around the dimensional tunnel and collapsing down. That's hard to keep coming up with a new version there. And yeah, the Brahm station itself. I mean, my God, can you imagine getting the last room at that hotel at the end of one of those arms? I mean, you'd be exhausted even from beaming to the middle, to the casino. By the way, did you notice that whole station warps? And I gotta say, it's always good. It never gets old. Hearing the original series theme fanfare, right? At the moment of triumph. Even in a bunch of rogues doing good. And so that was Jeff Russo, who was a composer of the Disco and the Picard and the Strange New World theme, and many individual episodes doing the main composer duties here. In fact, if you want to extend the kudos a little here and look at the rest of the credits and a lot of slots, you've got folks who've worked on other Treks before, especially Discovery. Glenn Keenan, who was a director of photography here. He did a couple of short treks. He did 20 across the first 3 seasons of Disco, and then he's done 9 Strange New Worlds so far. So another bunch of the Toronto gang working on modern Star Trek. Gersha Phillips, who was the costumer on Discovery. Paul Kirby is the production designer here. It's his first Trek. He's worked on Jason Bourne, the first movie, Hellboy, the Shazam sequel, and Glenn Hetrick, another familiar name from all the Treks, is on crew here in makeup as well. And you know what? There's likely a lot more in a lot of the other departments, all of them representing that Toronto Trek productions scenario. But sad to say, I think that a lot of those aliens, the costumes, the makeups, everything in the bar scene, the casino scene, were kind of wasted. There were just so many bodies, and there was a lot of focus on the characters. It's a lot of exposition being introduced, sometimes a little on the less elegant side, but I just felt like there was a lot of money spent. I wanted to see a lot of those characters a little longer, and I just feel like a lot of good work maybe didn't make it to camera, sadly, which is doubly sad because that's the one section that felt like it had money spent on all those extras and costumes and makeups. The rest of the movie felt like it was a lot of cavernous scenes with 2 and 3 people, 2 or 3 character actors in the scene, which made the room feel even more cavernous. Fact. the Terran Empire ship coming through that Sam was flying through, that we saw them, and then we had fights transported there. Was that maybe the Discovery Bridge redressed before everything was torn down? You know, the Section 31 sets used those stages. It seems so cavernous, just like the old days. Yeah, not just that room, the corridors, some of the other rooms, the corridors, the control sets. Yeah, and some corridors and bridges and the corridors. Lots of corridors. By the way, the Section 31 ship, the one that's in the ship flyby in the opening bumper, did it ever have a name? The Section 31 home ship, that they lost halfway through. It had no name. It didn't even have an NCC number, any kind of registry number, a model number. How do you not have a name for your ship, even in Section 31? How do you not let the audience know the name of your ship in Star Trek? And I'm not even thinking about the toys, the little ships. No, seriously, what do you think will be the reaction to this movie? And that's what we've come down to, the Section 31. Do you almost think it might be generational? Is a glib, kind of cynical, entertaining movie, is that more for young audiences, or is it not weighty enough for you and your gen? I mean, do you still care about Georgiou? And the surviving three on the team now, Alok, Quasi, and Garrett? Do you want to see more? There's no platform reset. She's still there. I thought they would bid goodbye to her so she could do movies and they would continue on. Well, it's not a backdoor pilot. If this goes on, it'll be other movies, so I guess they'll fit them into her movie break. We've not said goodbye to Georgiou. She's there among the surviving quartet. And look, with Strange New returning and Academy still to debut with 2 seasons in the can, and nothing else is on tap in sight, except for the Legacy campaign and maybe a hoped for future for both of the animateds. I mean, does this tone, does that add to Star Trek? These characters, these situations? What do you think? Well, I know one thing that just dawned on me. We've seen this before. We've seen this before. The impact of a Section 31 situation where we started with a series that was developed and then wound up being a movie. Just a movie. And of course, I'm talking about Phase 2, the 70s. It's going to be the series that launched the first fourth network, right? The Paramount network of the 70s. Hey, Decker and Ilea and Zahn, the Spock replacement, were all going to be regular characters. And of course, then they all get killed off in the motion picture. And thank you, Ratha Khan, for coming along later. But what would that have looked like? How much of the Section 31 cast would have looked? I mean, how much of them, we'll find this out eventually, how much were they designed to be recurring characters, those that have been killed off along the way? Same way with Ilea and Decker. What would a weekly Phase 2 have looked like with Ilea and Decker every week? What would Section 31 have looked like with this entire team of 6 or 8 folks? Rogues though they are. I mean, there's story drafts, if not some full scripts for this series. Look, they were working on it from 2018, 2019, up until January 2020. They were supposed to start, when it went into pre-production for real, they were supposed to start shooting in May and run through November 2020. Pandemic hit in March, everything shut down, and then by the time it came out, they were back at it. But then by April 2023, the decision had been made, move on, make it a movie. That was a combination of, Michelle Yeoh's career blowing up and all these other Strange New coming down the pipe and bumping them from the bullpen until we went with the... But that's just so what happened to Phase 2, right? And turning into, take the pilot, make it the motion picture, we've got to get something out the door. Now that's a different dynamic than what's going on here. But I just watch I watched Mel go down and Zeph. And yeah, even Fuzz. Were they designed to be series characters? How would this dynamic have played out if you'd had that entire team week to week? Dum 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 dum. Will we be debating this 20 years from now? Just like Phase 2. Would Phase 2 have worked as a series, or would it have been the clunkiest thing from hell, late 70s, trying to aspire to something bigger? Just 10 or so years ahead of being able to make it. I don't know. I don't know. We can talk about it, we can debate it, but you know what? I wouldn't get your prime directives in a bunch over it. Well, did I blow your mind with that one? Well, maybe this is a good place to sign off on this second opinion. Yeah, that's what I think about this little 90-minute, 110-minute blockbuster. Is it going to cause more movies, Section 31 or other, huh? Come on, tell me what you think. Drop a comment below, and while you're at it, come on, go ahead. Like and subscribe, do all the things. Boost the signal, would you? I dare you to subscribe for some cool Star Trek commentary. You know, if you appreciate the Dr. Trek point of view and philosophy and tone, I invite you to go over and check out all of our live experiences like, well, Portal 47 back down driving, right, and Trekland Trek's day tours around Southern Cal, but also our podcast, Trek Files from Roddenberry, Trekland Tuesdays live on Tuesdays. Come and join us around the world, and Cadet Alice, of course. And more Second Opinion when we get back around to Fresh Trek again, would you? It's all over there at LarryNemecek.com, along with our Cameo store. Yes, I do those. And our TeePublic shop. Until next time, gang. Trek well, everybody.